You're watching the Mid-Atlantic Lectureship. Changes ahead, embracing change.
To rejoice. Great evening, everybody. Glad to be here. Thankful for everybody coming out. We appreciate you being here. You could have been anywhere, but you came here, and we appreciate that. I definitely want to thank God for an opportunity to be here to share a portion of His Word. Thankful for everybody, every single church that has something to do with putting this event together. It does take a lot of work, and we're just forever grateful. I do want to acknowledge my family. There's a bunch of people here, so I can't acknowledge everybody, but I can acknowledge my household for sure. I'm just thankful for my wife. There's my wife right there, Ashley Woolford, and just, thankful for her. She's been by my side every step of this journey. My daughter tries to hide out, but, she's right beside her. She looks just like me. And then, of course, right beside them is my good old mama. So I definitely want to acknowledge them. And I see a familiar face up here, my boy, brother Norm Newton. For those of you who don't know, we go way back. Way back like Cadillac seats. So I'm just, for y'all to catch that on the way home. But no, I'm just thankful. Norm is one of those people that he got serious about the Lord way before I did. And we still were able to maintain a friendship. And then him and Calvin is another brother. And then once I started to become more serious about my walk and my journey, they were right there. And then he's been by my side every step of the way since then. And both of us grew apart to come back together. And I know Satan is just nervous because we played basketball together, and we did some sinning together too. Oh, okay, I forgot. Y'all don't sin, right? Oh, I'm sorry. My bad, Norm. I thought this was real people, bro. My fault. I got the wrong message, man. I'm sorry. Norm didn't do any sin. It was just me. Nevertheless, I'm thankful. All right, y'all. My topic today is called the effects of a changed relationship with God. The effects of a changed relationship with God. Now, we're going to be dealing with Galatians 4. You can go ahead and get your Bibles ready. We're going to be dealing with Galatians 4, verses 4 through 7. Galatians 4, verses 4 through 7. We're going to walk you through the text step by step. Matt got me on the reading. Before we do that, as you turn, just kind of listen to see what was going on at that time. Because in order to understand the context or understand the text we're about to cover, you got to understand the context of what was going on at that time. Yeah. Now, I know this is a very studious and educated audience, so just bear with me. I'm sure I may be saying something that you are already familiar with, but it's important just in case we got some visitors. Is that all right? Amen. So let's go through this. So the person that wrote this was Paul. So Paul was reaching out, and he was dealing with the church of Galatia. And the reason he was reaching out to them because it was brought to his attention that there was some false doctrine being taught. So he became frustrated because obviously he helped plant this church. He evangelized there. He did a lot of work. And he was preaching the gospel. He was preaching salvation through the gospel. And of course, you and I are very familiar with that. But at the time, there was something being preached. Judaism was one of the biggest things. And these people were coming through, and they were going back to trying to promote the works of the law. And when Paul heard this, he said, you know what, I got to reach out to them. Because as my brother said earlier when he did his portion, sometimes you just got to reach out to people and you just got to address what's going on. So Paul began to do that, and he did it in letter form like he always does. Now, a bonus tip, because I heard somebody way in the back, it was a visitor or somewhere, they said, well, when you go up there, can you just say what the gospel is? Because that's what I'm here to learn about. So just for your note, I know this is a bonus tip, but you can just go to 1 Corinthians 15, 1 and 4. And you can just see that Jesus was alive, Jesus died, Jesus rose again on the third day. So by definition, those of you that wanted to know what the gospel is, you can just note that, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. But for your notes, make sure you reference that. And then for additional study, you can go ahead and get loose in Isaiah 53. Is that okay? Now, since we have the bonus tip in place, now let's get back to my boy Paul. Now, Paul at this time, he was reminding them who he was. See, Roy Jones was a boxer. Anybody remember Roy Jones Jr.? He was a boxer, right? He was a bad man. And he had a song one time. It was called Y'all Must Have Forgot. And he had went through all these he had went through all these, I forgot to give y'all a disclaimer, I'll come back to it in a minute. But he had went through all these other fights, all these fighters he had fought, all these battles he had won, and he said, y'all must have forgot. And when Paul opened up his letter, he began to say that through the same text. Y'all must have forgot. Y'all must have forgot who I am. Y'all must have forgot what I've done. And he began to tell them about the power of being an apostle. So he had to remind them about the significance of being an apostle, and he had to remind them about the truth of the Gospels themselves. So that's what you see in the early stages so far. Now, let me tell you something really quickly in terms of encouragement. You got to be willing to repeat yourself. Sometimes you got to be willing to repeat yourself. Your family and friends and people you're trying to reach, they may or may not get it the very first time. But you got to be willing to repeat yourself. You can't just give up on them. You can't just turn your back on them. You got to keep sharing. You got to keep living. And then you got to share it again. And then you got to invite again. You got to manage your emotions and just continue to give the invitation. Paul said y'all must have forgot. So you got to continue to make sure you repeat yourself when needed. Number two, he went over the history of the law. So he was going over the difference between the history of the law and the impact of grace. You can see that in Galatians 1, 11 through 2 and 21. The third thing was he started to discuss faith and the impact that faith has with our salvation. It mattered back then and it matters today. We're going to walk through it step by step. So now that you have the overview of chapters 1, 2, and 3, and you can go back and read it when you get time, now we can go to the real text that I was assigned to discuss. So let's talk about Galatians 4. We're going to start in verse number 1, and we're only going to do 7, and then we're going to be done. And Lord, oh no, not Lord, because Sam, I only got a certain amount of time. So you got me? Okay, good. So when he's signaling you, signal me, and then I can, yeah. All right. Now, quickly, my name, Bishop Woolford III, for those of you who don't know, that is not a title, so go ahead and relax. See, look, some of y'all was, what do you mean he's a bishop? He looks young and only has one kid. How's he a bishop? Calm down, everybody. That's my government name. Now, at times, I get excited. Now, if you hear my voice elevate, that's not frustration, that's not anger, that's not anything like that. That's simply just my passion for sharing what I'm talking about. And it's okay to be passionate, right? Because you're passionate, I'm passionate, and most people are passionate about stuff other than the gospel. See, if we were talking about the Ravens, if we were talking about the Golden State Warriors, if we were talking about LeBron James or whatever it is that you were into, you would know how to elevate your voice. You would know how to get excited. You would know how to just be fired up and be in that moment and embrace what was going on. You would know how to do it out there. So I'm just telling you that sometimes you might see my voice go up when I'm explaining what's in the text. And the reason is because I've already let the text work on me before I give it to you. So the reality is truth is going to work with everybody no matter where you at. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. If you're dealing with the truth, you're dealing with God's word, it's going to come and knock on your door. And when it knocks on your door, you need to be ready and you need to be willing to change and adjust and move forward. So since the text had to work on me, I'm about to work on y'all and we're going to make it happen together. But what do we got in verse 9? Just give me 1 and 3. What do we got right there?
Now I say that the heir.
Stop right there. We need to discuss what the heir is. Most people from a certain community are not familiar with this term. You got it? Most people from a certain community are not familiar with this term. See, the heir is going to inherit something. Now, usually when we're talking about an heir, we're talking about money. And most people, unfortunately, don't have any. And they're unfamiliar with taking an inheritance. We're familiar with picking up debt. We're familiar with passing down recipes, but unfamiliar with accepting an inheritance. So we got to understand first and foremost what an heir actually is. So now we understand that an heir is someone that collects an inheritance. But the heir that we, and more importantly, you can only accept it at a certain age. At a certain age, you're eligible for inheritance. At a certain age. Are you with me so far? Just keep that for your notes, and we're gonna get back to it. Now, go ahead, continue reading for me, brother.
Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant.
So the servant and the heir are the same as a child, because the child doesn't have access to the inheritance until a certain age. Are you with me so far? This is framework for you. What else happens next, brother?
Though he be Lord of all.
So eventually he's going to have it all, but he doesn't have it at the time. Go ahead.
But is under tutors, governors, at the time appointed of the Father.
By who?
Of the Father.
By who?
Of the Father.
So the father, which is typically the matriarch of the family, is the determining factor. They make the decision on when you have access to the inheritance. That's the framework that we're working with so far. What happens next?
Even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world.
So we got this bondage situation going on. We're going to hold on to that point too, because we need to come back to that. But for the sake of time, we're going to move on. What do we see in verse number 4?
But when the fullness of the time was come.
Hold on. The father gives the green light when you can take the inheritance. The father gives the green light. And the term fullness of time, here's what that means. When the timing is right. But it's not based on when the timing is right for the child. It's when the timing is right for the father. So the father is the one that's determining when the child can have access to it. Are you with me so far? So just stay with me. You'll see where we're going at. Now, what happens next, brother?
God sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law.
Now hold on. So God sent forth his son. Now, why did he do that? He said, we see here he was born by a woman, and it said born under the law. So the law was in place at that time. The son, which we know is Jesus, because again, we're reading in one context, but we also have the liberty to understand the full text and the full Bible. So we know right here, God sent forth Jesus. Are you with me so far? Once again, you need to just remember that God, just like your earthly father, God is the one that is in control of when the timing is right for the children to have access to the inheritance. Are you with me so far? Now, we usually were, again, addressing money, but right here, this context is not talking about money. This context is talking about something way more important than money. Now, newsflash, this does not mean, this is not a green light to just live your life broke, busted, and disgusted. And mismanaging our money. That's not a green light there saying, well, I don't have no money, so no, that's not what this is. This is just simply saying that our life, our salvation is more important and more valuable than money. With me so far? Within the context, that's what we're talking about in terms of the inheritance. I just want you to see the inheritance that we're about to cover is more important than dollars and cents. Is everybody with me? Now, what do we see next, brother? Keep on moving for me.
To redeem them.
Now, redeem, you know what that is, don't you? You're redeeming coupons all the time. Huh? Cashing them in. Right? It's buying something back. Go ahead. What happens next?
To redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of the Son.
Hold on right here. So we need to dig into this. So Jesus came to do what? Fulfill the law. That's what we saw in verse number 4. In verse number 5, you and I were bought with a price. So now we get a chance to have the luxury to experience freedom. But here's the reality. Freedom isn't free. You and me just didn't pay for it. See, somebody had to pay for it, but it just wasn't us. And then when you let that sink in and you think about our text, which was the effects of change, the effects of the relationship, well, you should be instant when you say, wow, wait a minute, there was a law in place. I violated the law. Someone else took my place, but I'm gonna come in here like I owe God a favor. Like I'm doing I'm doing God a favor by showing up on Sunday. I'm doing God a favor for paying, what was the registration? $50 to come to a Mid-Atlantic event. Was it $50? $52? Come on, man. Are you with me so far? You got to sit back and think about it. There's a level of appreciation that should come from understanding that somebody took the place of you and me. How is it that we can come in sometime, barely open our mouth to sing, barely open our mouth to give somebody a hug, barely open our mouth to fellowship with somebody, barely open our mouth to go do charity and good works out there? How is that possible? When we sit back and think and realize we are in the body, we are in Christ now because somebody else took our place. Everybody in here ought to have a level of zeal. You don't have to sound like me, but you should sound like you. One step above where you already are at. Getting excited about the Baltimore Ravens. We didn't win nothing, they won something. But you talk about salvation, everybody got a chance to be a winner. Come on, somebody. So you see that in verse number 5, that he bought us back. He bought us back. That's important to understand. We also want to look at Isaiah 59. For your notes, just on my notes. Scholars. Isaiah 59, 1 through 2. It just talks about the separation of sin. That's all. So everybody started off together, and then we sent our way off the island. So then we end up way over here having a good old time, just sinning away. Not Norm, though, just me. Just me. I was just sinning away over here. So then I'm sitting over here all jacked up, and I got to figure out how I'm going to get back over there with my father. Because, look, if you were outside of your house, wouldn't you want to get back inside the house? Wouldn't you want to get inside the house, or you just want to stay outside? It's about to be hot outside. It's about to be humid outside. You want some air conditioning. You want a fan. You want some water. You don't want to just sit out here and be on your own island by yourself. You would want to know, how can I get back home? But you can't just go back home. You can't just think your way back home. You got to go through Christ in order to get back home. And the good news is Christ was already here because God already knew they're going to get off the island, but I got to get them back, and I got to have a mediator, and Jesus is going to be that. This is what we're seeing so far in terms of we over there, we got to get back. We can get back because God already said Jesus is going to be there. He's going to take your place. It's an exciting time. You ought to tell somebody, man, I'm thankful. Now, with my boy Norm, one more disclaimer. 1 Timothy 2, just for your notes, 1 Timothy 2, 4 and 5 says what? Tells us that God desires that all mankind be saved. Are you with me so far? And he has that one mediator in place. Now we saying and we laughing and joking saying Brother Norm didn't sin, but we do know that Norm didn't die for you and me. We do know that. Are you with me so far? So we know Norm was appreciative of Jesus, and honestly, he was appreciative of Marva. He met Marva first. And Marva said, you going to get serious about me? You got to get serious about God. And the rest is history. I know the real stories, and I'm leaving it at that. Let's get back to the text. They're about to throw tomatoes. Get ready. Get on verse number 6. This is a lot right here, and I'm going to rush through. How much time I got? Great. Let's go. Come on, brother.
And because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son into your heart, crying, Abba, Father.
Okay, now I got to slow down. Now, what we need to understand here, we need to talk about the gift of adoption. See, adoption, again, if you're home, if you came from a home, you just brush it off. If there's anybody here that's ever been adopted, you understand this text on a deeper level.
That's right. Come on.
If there's anybody ever been through foster care or something like that, you understand this on a different level. My family, some of my family members dealt with foster care, and they understand things like this on a different level. One of my uncles always jokes, and he said, man, I had everything until you came. He was talking about me. He used to get all the gifts. And then I came, I'm considered the youngest in my immediate family. And he said, when I came, he just got ginger snaps. All the gifts went to me. You about to catch up with this together, though. So the gift of adoption. Well, let's talk about this. It said, and because you are sons of God, because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of who? His Son. So now, because we believed, because we responded, God said, I'm going to give you access to my Son. I'm going to give you one of your first gifts of being adopted is going to be access to my Son. Let that sink in. Some of y'all ain't ready. Again, if you're a child and you don't have any gifts at any time, and the first time you get in, and in the house that you went to, they gave you the greatest gift you could ever imagine. That's what happened for you and me. Because we believe. Now, guess what? When you get adopted, you don't really have a whole lot of say in the adoption process. You didn't really do anything to touch the heart of the person that adopted you. Are you with me so far? Now what you see is that God was willing to send his spirit. He was willing to send the spirit of his son to us. Now why is that important? Well, you'll see this word Abba. Did you read that? And the word Abba, when you read this, and you especially read it back in Jewish times, you couldn't say that word. You couldn't even address the household that way if you were a slave. Now remember, in the beginning of the text, you and I were in bondage. You and I were slaves. So I got to finish number 7. Give me number 7 real quick. Man, I got all fired up and forgot my legs first. Give me number 7 real quick. Because remember I talked about being a slave and I said you couldn't even say the word Abba? Watch this. What's it saying verse number 7?
Wherefore thou art not more a servant, no more a servant, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through
Christ. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I just encourage you, when you get knocked down, you just got to look up. And if you can look up, you can get up. And if you can get up, you can move up. And the effects of Christ, it really depends on how are you going to apply the effects of the Spirit that work within you. Because unfortunately, when you become a child of God, you're still going to deal with this. Opportunity mixed with difficulty.
You have been watching the 2019 Mid-Atlantic Lectureship, Changes Ahead, Embracing Change, taking the fear out of what comes next.
There's a seat for everyone on Blackwell's bench.
I'd like you to subscribe to some of my favorite YouTube channels. Pkteemax, Humbleisdaway, Minute Parables, and also the Church TV Network. All right, guys, talk to you. These are some other sister stations. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment on their videos.
Blackwell's bench.